Well, we have this great essence collection. It's the pottery that comes in different shapes, the rounds and then the ovals, but they have this beautiful silver finish with this sort of rougher texture at the top. It's almost sandpapery. And so you really get the contrast of that surface, that smooth versus the rough, right at the edge, right on the edge of the vase, which makes it really a wonderful area to sort of interplay with the material that's in the vase. Now, what I'm doing today is a combination of the use of the vase, the essence collection, and the use of the wood strips. And this has been long awaited. Wood strips been available in Europe for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I believe this is the first time it's come across the ocean, across the Atlantic. It's something that we've been wishing for a long time as a designer. We've seen it used some, but we've not had the material. So we're really thrilled that it's here. There's a couple of examples, several examples actually, of how I've used it. Some of which are with a circular, which is what we've seen the Europeans do a great deal, so that there's a connection with a lot of rings, kind of like how we used to string rings as children to make a garland. It's that sort of a look. And then furthermore, what I've done is doing almost an inverted, so that it's instead of round, it's sort of a more concave look with the ends, which makes it a little bit more dramatic. And so there's that 2 different options done in different ways. And so I'm going to show you how to work with this material. This material actually comes in a bundle like this. It's wrapped like this. When you loosen up those bands, what you get is just strips. And they're going to be strips, definitely. It's not going to be all continuous. There's no need for continuity because you're going to cut it up and use it in different ways anyway. It's much easier to manage and use. So what I'm doing now, first is the circular pieces. And the best way, the quickest way to use them, and actually it's really a good idea to use it double thickness. So you get double loops at a time. And then all you have to do is staple them together like this. And cut. And you have your first ring like that. And so you're just going to do that repeatedly. The reason why I say it's better to use the double ring instead of just a single is that when you staple it together, when it's just a single, it could tear away on the wood strip. If it's double, it's just a lot more secure. So you do this. Oh, that didn't go. I didn't quite attach that one properly. So there. And then, just going to make a whole bunch of them like this. All different sizes. And it's actually a good idea to actually have a couple of rolls going of this strip because the inner roll is a tighter, like it wound tighter and it's set tighter, so you can get some of the smaller rings. But the outer roll, if you try to, let me just show you this to demonstrate, you'll see. If I try to make a real little ring with this, really, eventually, it'll just snap. It just doesn't go that far because it's the outer ring. But the inner ring, you save for those little rolls. So you can pull up from the inner ring to get that. And what you do after that, to connect it, I'm going to use this wire, the 1 millimeter wire, which I think is very easy to use. I'm going to cut it into pieces like this so that I'm going to take this and this, and I'm going to twist that around and literally band it so that it looks really nice and neat, and it gives you that visual bit of metallic. Pull it so it's really nice and tight, and then eventually, once it's done, what I usually do is actually clamp down on it so that it's nice and tight. Like this, so that it gives you those bands like that. And literally, you're just going to connect side to side and sort of beef it up to make it a wider piece or string it out to get the thinner extension. So that's basically what you do. This is a little bit tedious work, but really the fact that you can use a stapler for the ring production makes that part very, very fast. So this is basically what you do. I almost think that you could get by with maybe a little less wire so that the binding or the banding isn't quite so big, possibly. But I'm always concerned about mechanics, that I don't want it to be too simple and sloppy, because in the end, if it comes apart, then fixing could take longer. So I like it, the mechanics, to be very, very solid. So this is kind of how you start to put it together. And in that way, I created that as well as that. So these two examples uses this technique. Now, how do I make it so that it bows like that? Basically, what I do is I create a basic underlay armature. So for that piece there, I'm going to take a long piece of wire and I'll cut that, connect that together with, again, the 1 millimeter wire, and tighten it up so that the ends look decent. And then I might cross this in the middle like this, so that I have sort of two wings. And then I usually put a little underlay of another sort of wing shape that's a little bit smaller, so that it beefs up this width here adequately, so that I could then attach that overlay with the rings over a piece like this. So by doing this and attaching the rings, wait a minute here, these pieces like that, and attaching it in a few places, I can curve it as much as I want or whatever. So that's, it's an under armature is what you have to create. In this piece, I've simply used the stem of the orchid as the start to tie into, and then I curved it over, and it's just tied to the orchid. But the beauty of this is usually orchids have wire in there as the support, heavy wire that's clamped on, and by using this structure, I'm able to keep these stems tied to this so it stays up together like this. Now this has been actually planted in this vase. You can see that it's got the root system bare, and the roots are actually hanging in. You can see actually the water levels right here. If you put it to light, you'll see that the water is about halfway. So the roots are just hanging over the water, which is exactly what it likes also, is that it just needs that moisture, but not actually touching water. So inside that, because it's plugging pretty much the whole neck, that's what I like, the size of this neck very well, because the root ball just fits very tight over it. And I usually put a little bit of wire hooked over it, like around the root ball, so that it hooks over, it doesn't slip in. And that way I can control that it's sitting on top of water, floating over it, rather than sinking in. But this way, you add that extra color that makes it very interesting. I think this looks like, to me, it's very retro. It's that pattern that's retro. It's kind of like Target. And when you think about a lot of the fabric prints in that, there's a lot about little circles and repetitions of circles that makes it very 60s and 70s. So I like that.